So I congratulate for choosing this particular topic, especially mentioning about yoga for the vision of humanity. I congratulate the organizer for selecting this topic. Thank you, Rajashree, Shamista, and all the participants who are present here in today's webinar. And thank you, Gautam, once again for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I think we had a wonderful session. I would only say a couple of things. That first of all, it has been again re-emphasized that practice of yoga, it really helps us to attain a state of equanimity, and it does make us more resilient and calm to face any adversities, be it internal or external. And it also gives us an outlook wherein we connect with humanity around. My personal take is that if there is one such philosophy which is the most secular in its content and character, it is the yoga. And therefore, through this session and through the proceedings of the rest of the day, I'm quite sure this message will go again and again, that yoga is something which connects us to humanity. Thank you very much. I'm grateful to Dr. Gautam Saha for bringing me on this platform. And I really enjoyed some of the talks which I have been hearing since morning, and some of the personal experiences which people have shared. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Gautam Saha and Dr. Rajashree Ray. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think this was a very, very practical kind of session where people interacted with about their personal experience, life experience. So thank you so much, Dr. Rajashree Ray and Dr. Nitisha Oza, and the chairperson, Professor Ajit Avasti and Dr. Jayanta Das. We will now go on to the next session, which is individual talk by the speaker, Dr. Bruno Mosquero, who is from Brazil, and the topic is spirituality, integrated care in psychiatry. I would like to call upon the chairpersons, Dr. Sunil Mittal, as well as Dr. R.S. Murthy. From both of them, the chairpersons are from India. Dr. Sunil Mittal and Dr. R.S. Murthy, please.
Good evening, friends, and good morning too. It's indeed a pleasure being here today in this very, very important session, which is why its meaningfulness and popularity is clear from the number of hours it's going to run. And since morning, we've had the talks on yoga and its usefulness in daily life. And today we're going to right now move on to how it can be applied and how it can be integrated into psychiatric care. And for that, we have a very eminent speaker. But just before that, with me as the chairperson is Professor Srinivas Murthy, and as having been his student and one who inspires us right from day one till today, it's really an honor for me to be here co-chairing this session with him. And thank you, Professor Murthy, for allowing me this. So I will open up the today's session, and then Professor Murthy will wind it up at the end. That's how we have looked at it. From yoga to spirituality, that move, is it separate? Is it the same? Because yogic practices are indeed spiritual. Having learned yoga myself, I practice it every day, yoga and pranayama, and it gives me a huge amount of energy. Physically, it's benefited me to live with 3 slip discs. And mentally, it gives me the strength to go through a very hectic day every day. And as well as spiritually connect with myself and my surroundings. Having learned meditation from transcendental meditation from the master himself, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, I can vouch and I can say how it changes one's outlook to life, connectedness, and changes one's thinking process. Now, coming to the spirituality, is spirituality the same as religion? Is it different? And we all agree that spirituality transcends religion. It is something greater than religion. All religions have spiritual aspect. They sort of codify it so that one can connect to somebody, some being higher or a force higher, or one may say it's nature. In Spinoza's God, it may be just questioning how the whole question of one's existence and being. But then we know this, that is something more than just sensory experiences that make me. And the self being viewed as a part of a gestalt, as a whole, as a cosmic universe, a cosmos. And therefore it has themes like love, compassion, altruism, humanism, wisdom, and has a keen sense of inquiry, a sense of awareness about self and surroundings, mindfulness, and an inner struggle to become someone better. And therefore, the looking for the meaning of life, and in doing that, the right dharma. It doesn't really necessarily believe in God. I'm an agnostic, an atheist can as well be a very spiritual person. Buddha, for example, Buddhism doesn't believe in God. It believes in the right karma, the dharma. And dropping unhealthy patterns of thought, of emotions, and in doing so, certain practices to achieve this spiritual state. And like is, Patanjali's yoga, Patanjali has said, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, that yoga is restraining the mind from taking different deformed states of forms. And also that samatvam yoga uchyate, that the steadfastness of mind, the stableness of mind is a state one must aspire for, and that is yoga. The preventing the mind from taking different forms, emotions from taking different forms, that is yoga. And for doing so, it says that yoga karmasu kaushalam, doing things right, doing them in an excellent, correct manner is what gets you there. And that focus, that concentration builds with various yogic practices. To deal with these issues of integrating spirituality in our patients who may be theist, who may be atheist, but then since spirituality transcends all of this, we have one of the most eminent speakers on this, Dr. Bruno Paz Mosqueros, who is the secretary of the WPA section on religion, spirituality, and psychiatry. And his specialization in analytical orientation psychotherapy by CELG UFRGS. And he's a master in medical science in psychiatry. He's a member of the psychiatry and spiritual nucleus of the Rio Grande do Sul Psychiatry Association and the Committee for Studies in Spirituality and Mental Health of the Brazilian Psychiatric Association. He is a doctoral student in psychiatry and behavioral sciences, and he is a well-known academic. And Dr. Mosqueros worked with spirituality in depression, the spirituality in suicidal patients, the whole question of spiritual coping, spiritual resilience, spiritual struggle is well known to all of us. So over to you, Professor Mosqueros.
Good morning from Brazil and good evening to all of you. Let me share just a minute my screen. Very briefly. Just a technical issue here to share.
Professor Murthy, sir, while Professor Mosqueros, his slides are there. Over to you, Professor Mosqueros.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here, talking about this more broad concept about spirituality and building upon all those amazing conferences and knowledge and wisdom from the previous presentations. And today, commemorating this International Yoga Day, I would like specifically to talk about spirituality and how can we integrate this human dimension that connects all of us from different cultures and places in the world in our healthcare, specifically in psychiatry. So I would like to talk first why spirituality is so important in healthcare. What about what kind of scientific evidences we have about these topics? And finally, what are the pathways we can explore to integrate spirituality in psychiatric care and mental health care in general. And I would like to start thinking about this definition, especially for research purpose. We need a more specific definition of religion and spirituality to try to understand that and to measure somehow in our studies. This is a well-known definition proposed by Professor Alexander Moreira Meida. He's a Brazilian researcher, and Professor Dinesh Bugra, well-known from all of us, that reviewing a lot of literature talk that spirituality is really this relationship or contact with a transcendent realm of reality that is considered sacred, a truth or reality. This is the definition of spirituality. It's more a personal thing, and religion would be more understand as a collective, a community aspect of including rituals and practices and institutional aspects of spirituality. But here we try to see and understand what is the importance, the relevance of this more broad concept of spirituality in mental health. And why this is so important? When we get some worldwide surveys, we see that around 85% of the world population report belonging to a religious affiliation. But looking at spiritual beliefs and faiths, more than 95% of the world population report some kind of spiritual beliefs and faith. In Brazil, talking about our country, we see that around 83% of adults report that religion or spirituality represent very important things in their lives. Not just important, but very important. And another aspect that is very relevant too to our clinical practice is that 73% of adolescents also report that these are extremely important things in their lives. But trying to expand our knowledge about these topics, this is another definition that it's much more useful for our clinical practice, proposed by Dr. Christina Puchalski in the United States, showing that spirituality could be viewed as this aspect of humanity that is the way we try to seek and express meaning and purpose. We try to connect ourselves to the moment, to ourselves, to others, to nature, to the significant or the sacred. This is a more broad, certainly, conception of spirituality that could be much more helpful when we try to think in our clinical practice and to integrate different expressions of spirituality in the world, including, for instance, different religious traditions, different faiths, beliefs, and certainly expressions coming from yoga, for instance, and to understand how these definitions and how these concepts are related to each person we are seeing as a clinical, in our clinical encounter as a professional, mental health professional. And it's very nice to see how this definition of spirituality is very connected to the idea of compassion. They have many implications. We see common dimensions, including the idea of transcendence, when we need to transcend ourselves to get connected to other people. This idea that spirituality calls us to service, to altruism, to try to decrease suffering and release suffering from other people, and how much the idea of sacred and transcendence brings us to these reflections, to be aware of where we are and to be more compassionate. And this has patient implications, because patients might understand this spiritual integrated care as more compassionate, more patient-centered in the specific needs. We have studies showing that a spiritual integrated care could improve the satisfaction with mental health care and improve the sense of well-being and healing. That is certainly our objective. And we have implications also for us as healthcare professionals, improving our sense of meaning and purpose, spiritual well-being of the mental health professional. Probably we should think about burnout that many professionals in healthcare. It's a way to decrease a compassion fatigue. It's another interesting concept we need to be aware. So this integration could be viewed as very positive in psychiatry and healthcare generally. And what about the scientific evidence? What kind of studies we can show to important this association could be? Just showing some examples. This is a very interesting systematic review performed by Professor Arjan Brand from the Netherlands and Professor Koenig in the United States, with more than 150 prospective studies trying to understand what was the relationship between religion, spirituality, and depression in more than 200,000 people in different studies. And they see this relationship that people with more religiousness or spirituality present less depression in 49% of studies. There was no association in 41% of studies, and in some studies they saw more depression. But generally you have this huge protective effect of religion and spirituality. Expanding our understanding, this is another remarkable study performed by Dr. Liza Miller in the United States from Columbia University. And she, in her group, follow up for 10 years people in the United States, trying to understand how important was religion and spirituality in their lives and how that would impact the risk of depression in 10 years. And they identified this association that the importance of religion and spirituality at the baseline decreased the risk of depression to 1/4 the risk in 10 years. And when they looked at the individuals at higher risks, that were individuals with a family history of depression, with higher genetic vulnerability, probably, the protective effect was even higher. They saw this 1/10 risk of depression in 10 years. In the same group, they found also neurobiological correlates of this association in the brain, showing that people that have higher spirituality also have a higher cortical thickness in different regions associated to depression, other very interesting research. And we have in addition to these insights, some very interesting results from our studies here in Brazil too. This is a study we had published in the Journal of Affective Disorders, where we tried to understand what was the relationship of intrinsic religiosity, a concept very, very close to spirituality, is the degree that the people really have a motivation and a sense of that spirituality and faith are really important in their lives, what these concepts would impact the outcomes of patients with severe depression here in Brazil. And we found this association of intrinsic religiosity with higher resilience, higher quality of life of those patients, a decreased suicide risk lifetime. And we also identify an association of another neurobiological marker potentially associated with neuroplasticity in this sample of individuals. So we try to compare the BDNF levels. It's a marker, a biological marker of neuroplasticity, comparing patients in the hospital admission and discharge, and comparing those individuals with higher intrinsic religiosity and low intrinsic religiosity. And we have this association that at discharge of the hospital, those individuals with higher intrinsic religiosity or spirituality more broadly, they had higher serum levels of BDNF and other potential markers showing the benefits of these associations in our clinical practice. Moving forward, we need to understand how to use this information. Is it possible to integrate this information in our clinical practice as mental health professionals or psychiatry? How can we do that? How can we integrate those issues in our clinical practice? We saw in many studies that sometimes professionals show some barriers to integrate spirituality in clinical care. Here in Brazil and in the United States, we have many surveys showing that. The main barriers reported by professionals that want to address spiritual issues of patients in clinical care include ethical concerns, how to do that in an ethical basis, with the lack of training during their professional formation, and sometimes concerns about time. People in our society, with many things we need to do during our clinical care, sometimes some professions claim that they don't have enough time, or they are concerned about time to do that. We have many practical guidelines that can help us to do that in an evidence-based way, in an ethical way. We need to integrate those issues in a patient-centered way, in a respectful and sensitive and open way to different traditions and faiths and different beliefs patients report to us, not proselytes, certainly. And we need to be aware about our personal history, spiritual history, in order to be more open to that perspective of the patients. We have these interesting results here from Brazil, showing that 82% of patients interviewed think that it's very important to the professionals to ask about those issues in clinical practice, but only 36% of the patients here in Brazil were previously asked about that in clinical healthcare. And 68% of patients were interested in a spiritually integrated psychotherapy, for instance, for depression. These are results here from Brazil. One practical way to address that, certainly, is to collect a spiritual history of all the patients that come to us. We need to ask about their history, their tradition, how this tradition is related to their personal questions, suffering. So this is a very practical way to start addressing spirituality in mental health care. We have the FICA instrument proposed by Dr. Christina Puchalski from the States, that it's another helpful tool to address the spiritual history, talking about in their faith, how important this faith is in people's life, if the person belongs to a community, and how they want to address that in clinical practice. We have another different research published very good journals showing the benefits to spiritual assessment in psychiatry. This is one from Professor Philippe Mugile from Geneva, showing that psychiatrists that did this spiritual assessment perceived that for 67% of patients it was very useful. And patients feel very comfortable and very satisfied talking about their experiences, even in schizophrenia. We also have in this research that for 71% of people from with diagnosis of serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, religion and spirituality was a source of hope, purpose, meaning. For most people, these kind of beliefs were a source of strength that lessened their symptoms, decreased the use of substances and alcohol, and just and only for 10% it was a source of suffering and mental health concerns. But it was a very important way to decrease also suicide attempts. This is something very practical we see in our clinical practice. It's a source of social integration and connect us as communities. Also, research shows us that could be a way to foster adherence to treatments. So it's something that we need to be aware as clinicians in our clinical practice. Another way to integrate that would be certainly the spiritual integrated psychotherapy programs. It's a very interesting meta-analysis from Dr. Laura Captari showing that spiritual integrated psychotherapy have a comparable efficacy to conventional psychotherapy, but would be more suitable to increase spiritual well-being of our patients. So something we need to be aware of. And certainly more broaden when we think about recovery or full recovery, not just relief of symptoms, spirituality has a very important role in our patients' lives. This is another interesting research, Dr. Arjen Brand from the Netherlands, showing how many people find meaning and find hope and strength in their spiritual beliefs, even during these psychotic episodes and very difficult episodes in psychiatry. Dr. Liza Miller, also from Columbia University, talks about this view of our patients, not just as a symptom or a disease, but this way of seeing our patients as spiritual beings. And she talks a lot of that in her book, very interesting book. Invite us to think about not just religion and spirituality as a separate domain of our lives, but as a
just interrupting, Dr. Bruno, you have 2 minutes left.
Thank you.
Just a time check. Sorry. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you very much. Talking about this spiritual journey, and finally, we can see spiritual experiences not just as external practices, not just as a search for well-being or a search for recovery, but as these spiritual growth experiences that bring us awareness, reflections, doubt, that help us to reflect about ourselves, that invite us and challenge us to self-transformation, to find healing, to find meaning in life, to grow as people, as an individual, and finally to find this connection to compassion and to love as a more expression. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share some ideas and the opportunity to participate in this conference. And thank you very much.
Can you get off the slides, please? Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's been a very, very comprehensive, critical review of the issue of spirituality in psychiatric practice. I just want to touch upon two aspects. One is that why is this division that has occurred between the body and mind? This has been worrying me a lot, and I want to just share with you 2 or 3 things. One is this book called Descartes' Error, which touches on this area. Let me just read a paragraph from The Cure Within, which is body-mind relationship, how this occurred in the 17th century. One morning, so the story goes, the 17th century philosopher Descartes awoke from a dream, inspired to pursue the study of metaphysics. The culmination of study was his conclusion that body and mind were separate entities. Interestingly, at that point, he and the Roman Catholic Church struck a deal. As a man of science, Descartes would restrict himself to the body of human anatomy, leaving the mind and the soul to the care of the church. That's where the problem arises. Luckily for us, in India, we don't have this dichotomy. We have in Ayurveda a link between the two. So I think we really have something. I have written, and I'll be happy to share it, that spirituality is one of the underutilized resource for healthcare in general and mental health care in particular. For those of you who are interested, there are 2 excellent books which are there. One is this book of Woman, 2018, that is Why Religion and Spirituality Matter for Public Health. The only disadvantage is it costs about 12,000 rupees. This one, but if you have a Kindle, you can download the first 3-4 chapters. The second one, much more important, is Koenig, who is really the father figure of spirituality and mental health, is bringing out a second edition of the book in September. And the first edition was in 2012. And I think that will be a very, very good one, because his 2012 article reviewed all the literature in this area. And in 2023, I'm sure it will be a big resource. Thank you very much, Bruno. It's been a fantastic to listen to you. You brought in a lot of material to that. And I personally enjoyed it because I have a long 50-year association with Brazil. Dr. Ellis Brusnello was one of the investigators for the WHO project when we did it in 1970. Very good friend and a brilliant person. I would close it because we are behind time, and by asking Dr. Sunil if you would like to come back and say a few words.
I think in the interest of time, since everything has been said, I think this session has been brilliant. It sort of summed up what we've been speaking about since morning to apply in our clinics and see how our patients and our own personal journeys can benefit. Thank you very much. And thank you very much,
Bruno.
Professor Bruno Mosqueros. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Srinivas Murthy.
Thank you. Back to Sharmishta.
I'll just hand over. Thank you so much for such an informative, and sorry that I have to stop you, but it was lovely and a very, very inclusive kind of talk. Thank you so much. Now I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Niska Sinha, for the rest of the program. Dr. Niska.
Thank you, dear ma'am. So this talk, as expected, was quite informative. And in modern day world, when we talk of anything, we always talk of evidence-based. We always ask for evidence. What is the evidence? How can you say this? We don't take anything for granted, be it yoga, be it our psychiatry practice, be it any clinical practice. So the next panel which we have today is evidence-based integration of yoga in clinical practice. So surely it is going to be a very informative and interactive sessions. For moderation of the sessions, we have a very dynamic person. We all know, we all love him. He is associate professor from Murshidabad Medical College, and sir is EC member also for Indian Psychiatric Society. So over to you, Dr. Ranjan sir, to introduce the panel and to go ahead with the sessions with the evidences as well. Yeah.
thank you, Dr. Dr. Nishka and Dr. Sharmishta, the brilliant MOCs, and we have gone across around 4 hours and 15 minutes. This program is so wonderful, and still we will have a very sizable and knowledgeable gathering with us in the Zoom platform. At the outset, I'd like to express my gratitude to SAARC Psychiatric Federation President Dr. Gautam Saha, our very own Dr. Rajashree Ray, who is the organizing co-chairperson of the Yoga and Spirituality Subcommittee of the SAARC Psychiatric Federation. So we all know that we'll be discussing about the EBY. We come across the EBM, evidence-based medicines. Now we'll be discussing on the evidence-based yoga practices. We all know that the demand of the complementary and the alternative medicine treatments has been increasing over a period of time. And some studies have reported that approximately 56% of the patients with depression have used some sort of CAM therapy, apart from the mainstream therapy. So before starting, I would like to invite here Dr. Mrugesh Vaishnav sir from India, who is the chairperson of this session. Dr. Vaishnav is the director of the Samvedana Happiness Hospital, Ahmedabad. Dr. Vaishnav had been the past national president of the Indian Psychiatric Society and currently holding the chair of the WPA Asian Task Force on Stigma. So, Dr. Vaishnav, can you unmute yourself and give the introductory comments?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ranjan. Welcome, everybody, to this session. At the outset, I would like to thank the president of the SAARC Psychiatric Association, Dr. Gautam Saha, and Dr. Rajashree, and also all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to chair this session. Well, we'll be discussing about the evidence-based integration of yoga in clinical practice. We have Dr. Kaustubh Chakravarti as and Dr. Ranjan Bhattacharya as our moderator. Now everything requires to be evidence-based if we want to practice. There is a good news and there is a bad news about yoga. As it is already discussed that we are now working very hard to fight against stigma in the developing and developed countries. And we all know that anything and everything which is related to mental health and mental illness, it may be psychiatrists, it may be psychiatric medicine, it may be psychiatric treatment, it may be psychiatric hospital, everything is stigmatized by our society. And we are fighting against the stigma. So the good news is that now people are becoming aware of the stigma. And the bad news is that still the stigma is prevailing. Now, how it is applying to the yoga? Because still today, those who are the promoters of the yoga go on promoting that the psychiatric medicines are of no use, psychiatric treatment are of no use, and anything and everything which is there in the mind or which is the mental illness can be cured by the yoga, by exercise, by meditation, and that all like that. So now we have the evidence base, that is the good news, that yoga can definitely work as an adjunctive treatment to psychosis, to schizophrenia, to bipolar disorder, to depression, to anxiety, and many other illnesses. But it cannot at the same time replace the basic medical treatment or the non-pharmacological treatment, which is definitely required. With this comment, I have heard earlier the evidence-based treatment of the schizophrenia, of the psychosis by yoga, and definitely yoga has to be there in our prescription. We have 4 different speakers, I think, The esteemed moderator will introduce the speaker, and let's proceed with our panel discussion on evidence-based integration of the yoga in clinical practice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Murugesh Vaishnav sir, for your words of wisdom. We have another chairperson. I'm not very sure whether he has joined here or not. Dr. Vijay Chaudhary from India, who is working in the Arya Hospital, Guwahati, Assam. And Dr. Chaudhary is currently the president of the Indian Psychiatric Society, Assam State Branch. Do we have Dr. Chaudhary with us?
No,
I
sir,
guess
he's
not.
not able to join. He has
Okay.
sent his apologies just. So
Okay,
please carry
okay.
on.
Okay, thank you so much for this info. So as you know, we are requiring and we have the evidences lacking till this beginning of this century. Since the first publication about the yoga, which was done in the year around 1948 till 2005, we have very less scientific evidence-based literatures about the effectiveness of the yoga as a therapeutic modality. So systemic research is still inadequate, and a review of the yoga as a therapy for depression, anxiety disorder, musculoskeletal pain disorders, and others disorders have been now being studied very well. So I would like to invite the first panelist. Our first panelist is Dr. Chong King Yi Agatha, who had joined from the Hong Kong. She is a member of the WPS section of the Religion, Spirituality, and Psychiatry. Welcome, Dr. Chung. Would you like to mention about the recent evidences which is supporting the yoga as a therapeutic modality in different psychiatric conditions?
Thank you for your kind introduction. Thank you so much for inviting me to have some sharing on this topic. As I'm practicing, I'm a clinical psychiatrist practicing in Hong Kong. And so in clinical practice, I have to explain the evidence of every psychiatric treatments. However, I also find the limitations because of using yoga-related therapy because of the lack of evidence. So in my locality, we are not because the universities are not very familiar with yoga, and we are lack of the yoga teachers or practitioners in Hong Kong. And for Hong Kong, the popular one is the exercise. Only the exercise aspects of yoga were taught and not the meditation part. So in case they would like to have some research, we find it difficult to set the criteria how to define an effective yoga as a therapy. And for in contrast to yoga, there's another spirituality related therapy, which is a bit more popular in Hong Kong, which is mindfulness. Because mindfulness has been integrated with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to make, and there's a number of research regarding that therapy. Therefore, they will prefer using the mindfulness-based CBT more. And therefore, in my clinical practice, in case I would recommend a yoga therapy for them, mostly the patients with musculoskeletal issues. For example, the pain, some chronic pain condition, or somatization in mood disorders. And also, I found that in Hong Kong, because people in Hong Kong working very long hours in offices, and many of the people working in office, they work more than 10 hours a day. They are sitting in the office and also always using the computer. And if you didn't understand the situation of a standard office, when you stand there for 10 hours a day for a few years, then most likely they will have some musculoskeletal problem in their neck, at their shoulders, and their back, causing neck pain, back pain, headache, etc. So for although we have emphasized the occupational health, that is to make a good posture of during working. However, due to a number of limitations in office settings, it is not easy to achieve, and therefore yoga in Hong Kong, which are mainly introduced as a kind of relaxation and stretching exercise, become popular for office ladies, and also they don't need a lot of space to do the yoga. Therefore, in Hong Kong we have a crowded space, and therefore they just use a yoga mat and then can do yoga for exercise at home, or even at a staff restroom, staff room for rest during their lunch time or some resting sessions. So and so that I would say that we have a lot of room for improvement in yoga in terms of medicine, evidence-based medicine. So and these are my sharing. So if you have any question, feel free to come up to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agatha. Previously, we had lots of evidences in literature about the medication-induced changes in the EEG. Now we are having the same kind of evidence with the functional and neuroimaging we have these days, like fMRI, PET, SPECT. So I'd like to introduce now our next panelist, Dr. Prosenjit Ghosh. Dr. Prosenjit Ghosh is a renowned psychiatrist from Silchar and Kachar areas of the Assam. He is currently the zonal representative from the East Zone of Indian Psychiatric Society, as also he is holding the chair of the Office of Honorary Editor of Indian Association of Private Psychiatry. Welcome, Dr. Prosenjit. So my question to you that we have the evidences supporting the changes with the yoga therapy. The difficult part of the research is the standardization, the duration of the yoga therapy, the type of yoga therapy we practice with the different disease conditions. So can you enlighten us about the lacunae of these areas where the scientific literature cannot support altogether the effectiveness of yoga therapy?
Yeah. Thank you, Ranjan, for such a nice question. And my gratitude to the organizers like Dr. Gautam Saha and also Dr. Rajashree for invitation. I have been listening from the afternoon, various experts, they're talking about various aspects of yoga and meditation. You have rightly pointed out the main problem with yoga in the research area, there are basically three problems. One is to find a proper placebo. Second is to blinding, how to do the blinding. And third is the randomization. In the blinding, most of the studies, what they have done is they have made the rater blind, so that the rater does not know who is getting active treatment in form of medicine, who is getting placebo, or who is doing yoga. And regarding the evidence so far in the literature, most of the evidence that that have been published, they're mainly as yoga as add-on. Like Dr. B.N. Gangadhar sir has published a landmark study in Journal of Affective Disorder in 2000, where it was an RCT, where it was compared ECT, imipramine, and yoga. It was found that ECT was the having the best result or superior result. Yoga and imipramine were almost having equal results in case of depression. Then in 2013, Kramer, in a meta-analysis, he has found that yoga gives a good outcome as an add-on in depression. Regarding duration of yoga and how long it should be continued, when I was hearing Professor Bruno, he has talked about something about gray matter density in the brain. Various researchers have found out that those who practice meditation or yoga for a long period of time, they have a better neuroprotection in the form of less decline in the gray matter volume of their brain. And the explanation that was given is that yoga produces less oxidative damage, and it also causes less stress hormone release. So by these two mechanisms, it causes neuroprotection. So that is one aspect of beneficial aspect of yoga. I hope I could somehow answer your question, but it still remains open. That standardization that you have talked about. And another point in yoga is to have a regulatory body which will oversee and supervise the training of those who will introduce patients or asked to yoga and their registration. Like some speaker was talking, who will introduce yoga, this infrastructure problem. So who is basically certified to act as a yoga instructor, particularly in mental health? That point also needs to be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Prashanji, for this comprehensive and very lucid reply. So we know that we have started integrative healthcare. We are integrating the yoga therapy with the other therapy. And we have a lessons learned, and we have a seminal paper published in the International Journal of the Yoga by the NIMHANS group, Hemant Varga, Bharat Gholla, Kishore Kumar, Ramakrishna Venkatraman, Shiva Kumar, K. Gokulakrishnan, Shivarama Varamvali, and of course, V.N. Gangadhar said. So we have found that how the yoga practices have changed the scenario in India. So in this background, may I now request the admin here. We have a video presentation. We have a video presentation of Dr. Fabricio Olivier. Unfortunately, he won't be able to join here. So can we share the video presentation from your end? So yes, please. So Dr. Fabricio Olivier's presentation. He is a MD, BBA, MSc, PhD, Associate Editor of the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, and is affiliated to Federal University of the Sao Paulo, Brazil. Please play the video. Sound, please. We cannot hear from our end. So can you pass on the slides? Forwarding the slides. So he's mentioning about the significant domains research in Brazilian and world population. He also mentioned of the reason alleged by the psychiatrist, the theoretical, practical, or spiritual gap he has mentioned. Next, please. So there's a systemic review of literature and curricular proposal. It was quoted from BJP and academic medicine. Next, please. So we had quoted mention about the studies, the study design. Next, please. The randomizations. Next, please. So we have given the outline of the spiritual and religious aspects, spiritual history. Next, please. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Chandan. Please close it. So we're very sorry. We apologize because of these technological glitches. So one of our panelists is Professor Dr. Suresh Baramar. Has he joined here? Can anybody confirm whether Professor Dr. Suresh Badamat has joined or not?
No, sir, he is not here, sir. He's not been able to
Okay,
join.
thank you. Good enough. So again, I will come back to Dr. Agatha. So in the Southeast Asian perspective, so we have the different kind of spirituality, and in the Western practices, it is quite different. So Eastern part of this zone has been the pioneer of doing the yoga practices, which has been integrated and practiced in the Western counterparts. So what are the different changes we can see the practice of yoga therapy in Eastern and Western part?
So may I know that what are the questions that you would like to know more about the situation in Southeast Asia, or in Hong Kong, or in Chinese populations?
Yeah, in the Asian population versus Western European and Western population.
In fact, for China and Hong Kong, or even Japan, most of them they live in Taoism or Buddhism. So in Hong Kong, we have Buddhist schools to teach mindfulness, and therefore there are more mindfulness teachers that they can help to do researches. However, because we are in lack of yoga teachers, therefore difficult to carry out some research involving a number of standardized yoga therapy for the clients. So I think lack of related professionals is one of the issue. And in fact, they in Hong Kong, they mainly focus on the exercise part of yoga instead of meditation. Because when we talk about meditation, there may be some spirituality component. And we are not familiar with Hinduism. In contrast, we are very familiar with Buddhism. And therefore, this make some preferences. And however, I believe that the Indian people in Hong Kong, they are still very engaged in yoga or spiritual religious related activities. And therefore, I can see that although they have many challenges in Hong Kong, that their community, their religion really helped them a lot.
So one of the technique is the mantra, chanting the mantra, which is very commonly practiced as one of the yoga practices. Whether it is being practiced in Hong Kong, China, the other parts, Buddhist mantras or like that, chantings?
The mantra, that is the that's why it is difficult to carry out all-rounded or complete formal yoga therapy, because for mantra they have some hesitation and to teach that, and also because we are not very sensitive to body sensation. I would say this is a characteristic for Chinese people. They are not very care about their own body condition. They care about relationship with others, but always for my clinical practice, I saw many patients with depression. The cause of the depression is mostly related to the problem in different kind of relationships. For example, marital relationships, in-law relationship, and also parent and child relationship, and other peer relationship, etc. And therefore, I think it is somehow a tradition for Chinese people to just focus on others, because focusing on others is our relation building process. And in contrast, they did not aware of their own body. I find it difficult. For example, even in my clinical practice, I teach the breathing exercise. Which is very simple for most people. But in Hong Kong, I found that it is difficult to teach diaphragmatic breathing because they never never use their diaphragm to breathe, never use their tummy for inhalation. So and therefore for mantra and I would say that it is difficult to teach them to have the thinking in their mind, and they are very reluctant to be in touch with any body energy, etc. Because when we talk about energy, and some people may think about alternative medicine, and some people will regard it as not so and not so how to say not so concretely understood. There are some abstract concepts, and therefore these are all the difficulty. So I would say that with more understanding of formal yoga training, I believe this situation will improve. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Agatha, for this insight. We all know that the Buddhist psychology is a bit different. It is there's an insight meditation which provides a methodology for Buddhist psychology and Buddhist psychotherapy. The meditation object is one's own consciousness and the mental factors attributed to it. You know that the two common practices are concentration meditation like the Samatha Bhavana and the insight meditation, that is the Vipassana Bhavana. We had a lot of discussion about the Vipassana Bhavana previously. Our speakers have spoke a lot in India. I'll come to the Dr. Prashanjit Ghosh, because we in India have to see so many patients, and yoga therapy has been there for years. So whether we are having nowadays the newer treatment like biological treatment like RTMS, deep brain stimulation, how do you venture of your students or next generation to practice the biological treatment vis-a-vis the ancient so-called quote unquote treatment yoga therapy? Dr. Prashanjit, unmute yourself. Please unmute.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. First, I would like to answer the question that you asked to another panelist, Dr. Agatha. We all know that depression is basically limbic hyperactivity is there associated with hypoactivity of the frontal cortex. And Dr. G. Venkat Subramaniam et al. Published a paper in 2011 in the International Journal of Yoga, where they have shown that chanting of Om mantra produces limbic hypoactivity. It reduces the limbic hyperactivity, and they have proved it using control. In the control group, they have asked them to produce non-Om producing sounds, and it was done with fMRI. Coming back to your original question to me, I always believe that we should practice holistic medicine. I am a psychiatrist, I am a practitioner of modern medicine. That does not mean I should not pick up good things from the Indian traditional medicine or alternative medicine. And as you very well know, that NMC, National Medical Commission, recently has given a chance to the internees to go for an elective posting in Indian system of medicine. Maybe it is Ayurveda or maybe it is yoga. They can choose for an elective posting during their internship. So I think we should have a scientific mind. We should follow biological principles. We should all practice neuroscience or evidence-based medicine. But yoga has come with lots of evidence. As I was telling regarding depression, both CanMed, you all know famous guideline. CanMed has included yoga as an add-on in depression. And NICE guideline in 2014 has added yoga as an add-on in psychosis. So I don't think that there is a very strict border that this cannot be practiced. And during our busy practice and for our patients, I do not advise them some very difficult yoga or something which I don't know myself. What I advise them practically is to go for 10 minutes pranayam or breathing exercise, which definitely increases their concentration and produces a state of relaxation. And as you know that yoga means posture or asana, a breathing technique or pranayama, and dhyana or meditation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for your comprehensive response. So, in a nutshell, we can say that yoga improves the various psychiatric condition by positive self-talk, self-acceptance. It reduces the negative thinking bias, improves self-confidence. There are specific type of the yoga that have been used to address the different condition like depression, anxiety disorders, the somatoform pain disorders like savasana, pranayana, sudarshan kriya, Prakshadhana, Vipassana, Transcendental Meditation, Raja Yoga, so on and so forth. So thank you very much. We're really privileged and honored for giving us this opportunity to give a bird's eye view about the evidence-based yoga therapy. And from the bottom of my heart, I would like to give my sincere gratitude to Dr. Fabriano Oliveira, who has sent a brilliant message, but due to technical glitches, we won't be able to hear from him. Dr. Agatha Chung and Dr. Prashinjit Ghosh, the other panelists who are here. So I would like to hand over to the chairperson of this session, Dr. Shormishta Chakraborty. I guess Dr. Shormishta is still here. Dr. Shormishta is here. So she's not. So over to the organizer, Dr. Nishka Shingat. Can you continue with the next session? Thank you so much to all the panelists. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Ranjan sir, for moderating the session so well. And now that we have evidences from not only our country, as we had wonderful panel from across the globe, and we really got some evidences. So let's hope that we start imbibing principles of yoga in our day-to-day lives for a healthier and happier us. So over to Dr. Rajashree Ray ma'am for next proceedings.
Well, thank you so very much. And I would like to especially thank Dr. Nishka Sinha and Dr. Shormishta Chakraborty for actually being the two main anchors for this entire session. To be honest, they've been working tirelessly from the morning to make sure we've got this program together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, Shormishtadi and Nishka. And Shormishtadi also has been the chairperson for this session, but we've lost her for a little bit, and I do apologize for some of the errors. Now we move on to a very special sort of a session, and you must, I'm very, very grateful to the chairperson of World Psychiatric Association section on spirituality, religion, and psychiatry, Professor Alan Fung, for being here with us today to chair this particular session. And not only this, he has been instrumental in getting us connected with two very eminent speakers, Dr. Yusra Ahmed from Canada and Dr. Farah Abbasi from USA. Dr. Alan Fung will be chairing this session to be delivered by Dr. Ahmed, along with the Honorary Secretary of SAARC Psychiatric Federation, Dr. Imtiaz Dogar. So may I now hand over this session to our esteemed chairpersons, Dr. Fung and Dr. Dogar, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ray, for your very kind introduction. As Dr. Ray had mentioned, the next two presentations will be very special because they are delivered by two very well-known psychiatrists in North America. Both of them are of South Asian descent who are working currently in North America and who both have interest in promoting Muslim mental health, utilizing spirituality. So I won't say too much about their presentations, but I will first, proceed to introducing my great friend and colleague, Dr. Yusra Ahmed. So Dr. Ahmed is a community and academic psychiatrist in Toronto. And she's been long involved in community work and advocacy work with diverse population in Toronto, Canada, in the areas of marginalization, homelessness, refugee mental health, gender-based violence, etc., especially working with the Muslim population. She was instrumental for advocacy work with the Canadian government, and she played an instrumental role in the passage of the Bill C 233, which was a law against, is a criminal code against violence against intimate partners. And Dr. Ahmed created a program called Mindfully Muslim that she's going to tell you more about, which to me, I think is an amazing program for utilizing mindfulness, but integrating Muslim principles. And I had the honor to work with Dr. Ahmed in some of this work as well. So without further ado, I would like to pass the torch to Dr. Ahmed for her to tell you more about the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here to meet colleagues from across the globe, but particularly centered in South Asia, since I'm from the Indian subcontinent, having been born in Bangladesh. So I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm going to try and share my screen so you could see my slides. Hopefully this works. Do you see it? Is it visible, Alan?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
great.
Yes.
So much. So let's see if I can start it. There we go, right? Okay, this is good. Step one. Thank God. Okay. So yes, I wanted to reiterate what Alan had stated, which is that I am speaking from a North American perspective, even more specifically a Canadian context. And here we live in a very pluralistic, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-faith society. But overall, the tenor of the land is very secular. And so that has informed how this program has been developed and how it's evolved. Not only is the tenor of the land secular, I would go even further and say that we've gone through quite a bit in terms of Islamophobia. And I'm sure you're aware of some of the events that have transpired here. But if you're not, I could just quickly share that, for example, we had the election of the president of the United States, the attempt to enact a Muslim ban. We had in Canada some really striking and horrific situations like the Quebec City mosque shooting, as well as just last year a Muslim family was killed while just taking a walk in London, Ontario. So the climate has been quite challenging at times. And it has been an impetus for me to create this program to serve my community. And so I'm going to begin by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. So this is how we as Muslims tend to start any activity or exercise, by remembering God. And in our tradition, God has many names. And so there's Allah, there's Ar-Rahman, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Those are just some of his names. And I will also open with this prayer from the Quran, which we're encouraged to say before we speak. And it's in the footsteps, I'm walking in the footsteps of Prophet Musa or Moses, peace be upon him when I say this. This was the prayer he stated before he had to speak truth to power in front of Pharaoh. And, he had a stuttering problem. So he invoked God in this way. And so I'm going to follow in his footsteps and share the prayer. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. My Lord, expand for me my chest, ease for me my task, untie the knot from my tongue such that you may understand my speech, inshallah, ameen. So I hope that people can get benefit in whatever way is best for you today, inshallah, God willing. So what exactly is Mindfully Muslim? It's a group therapy program. And as I mentioned, there's been some some critical incidents here. And so people have been struggling with a lot of trauma in light of some of what's transpired. And so it is trauma informed. I would characterize this as a stage 3 trauma therapy program. And it's influenced by MBSR and MBCT. So these are 2 mindfulness-based therapies that have been secularized here in the Western world, that draw heavily from Buddhism, but also from Islam. Though I always found it striking that the Buddhist element was often talked about quite openly, but the Islamic element was not named, even though MBCT in particular, the entire therapy is centered around a poem by Rumi, who, as many of you may know, is a giant in the Islamic tradition, was a scholar and a jurist. So, you know, I just kind of drew upon what exists as a bridge to help my non-Muslim colleagues here understand the work. And I'm just integrating and grounding it within an Islamic context, and really rooting it in an Islamic understanding of the human heart and ego, and embedding it with principles of compassion and peace and love. And I like to say that Mindfully Muslim is inherently anti-oppressive, and that's because Islam is inherently anti-oppressive. And if you read the Quran, it is replete with this theme of, you know, not oppressing yourself and not oppressing others, not oppressing the earth. It is a central part of the Islamic tradition. So just to give you an idea of a session, and I'm mindful of time, so Alan, let me know, you know, I might skip over a few things, but, you know, it opens and closes with prayer. There's guided meditations, and then processing and debriefing around that. There's a lot of embodied practices, including, for example, elements of the Salah, which we deconstruct and kind of redo in a way that's more aware, more mindful, with a heightened state of consciousness. And the consciousness that we're talking about Islamically is not only just growing our self-awareness, our awareness of the earth, of others, of all of creation, but also of the Creator. So this is about enhancing God consciousness. And over the sessions, we drop hopefully into a deeper and deeper state of that level of awareness. And there's a lot of science mixed with poetry, and it is very much grounded in the Quran, Hadith, which are the sayings and the practices of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad, and other wisdom from the Islamic tradition. So I'm gonna probably zip through this because it's more of a Canadian context, but just to let you know, for example, strikingly, Islam is the second most populous religion after Christianity in Canada right now. And in Toronto, where I live, 8% of the population identifies as Muslim, and we could subdivide that category further into those who are Canadian born, those who are immigrants, and those who are refugees. And I will touch a little bit on the refugee situation because I work with that population closely. And people may or may not realize that actually the vast majority of the world's refugees right now, as far as we know, according to the UNHCR data that we have, are Muslims, up to 80%. And so you could look at some of the top countries that are refugee generating. And the only exceptions you might find here are Venezuela, which is listed there, but also Ukraine, for example. But a lot of the other countries you may see are Muslim majority countries. And these populations are fleeing and seeking refuge in Western lands in Europe, as well as North America. And so, you know, there's a lot of reason why we need programs like this. But furthermore, theoretically, there's a push to decolonize psychology and psychiatry, which really means trying to honor, you know, authentic traditions to the communities that we're serving, so that we're more culturally safe, we're more nuanced, we are resonating with the populations we're serving. And really overall, there's limited research on all of this. And so, we're trying to develop the program and hopefully research it. And I will skip through this part. Also wanted to share that because of those reasons, like the the absence of cultural safety, stigma, the language barrier, the lack of acknowledgement of spiritual or religious identities, especially in our secular context here, and the absence of a trauma-informed approach, even though there's a huge need, help seeking is still low, and a lot of people are suffering in silence. I touched on this briefly, that some of the political circumstances here pushed me to do this work. The pandemic as well, of course, has compounded things. I really did want to touch on the last point because it's an issue that's near and dear to my heart. As Alan mentioned, I've been a vocal advocate for a bill around amending the Criminal Code and the Federal Judges Act in this country around intimate partner violence. And the pandemic really exacerbated rates in Canada. So previously, one woman would die every 6 days in this country trying to leave her partner. And now it's one every other day. So we have a massive public health crisis. And it has been exacerbated by the pandemic, which obviously forced people into confinement, increased stress levels. There's hugely elevated inflation rates in this country right now. People have lost jobs. There's a lot of pressure and stress, and that comes out in terms of acts of violence in the home as well as in the streets. And we've seen that as well in Toronto. And I privy to that with the work I do with the homeless population. So Alan, you know that I can't do a talk without sharing a poem. So I hope I have time. Do I have time, Alan?
That's fine, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to share a case through a poem I wrote. This is a patient that I saw who, and I'm changing some of the details to protect the identity, but also on top of that, I did garner permission from the family to be sharing this story with you. So this is a gentleman that that is originally a Palestinian. However, he was born and raised in Syria. So right from the get-go, displaced. And he went through the war in Syria. Unfortunately, he was apprehended by government forces, jailed, tortured. He suffered a lot. He witnessed family members being killed in front of his eyes. He actually walked into Lebanon with a broken foot, and then was in a refugee camp there for quite some time, where the circumstances were so dire that there wasn't enough food to eat, and he would often go to a neighboring village to the shawarma restaurant and scrounge through the garbage to get whatever he could to find nourishment. Eventually from there, he made his way to Canada, and he was here and his living with his parents and his family. Initially did quite well, but then the unresolved trauma and all of that sort of resurfaced, and he took to drinking alcohol to cope with it, which was very difficult for his family, who is observant Islamically. And as you may know, there's a prohibition around drinking alcohol. So they were trying to get him help, but they got very, very, frustrated with the process. And eventually his younger brother actually gave him an ultimatum and said, you have to leave and sort yourself out. You can't be here drinking. You know, we have kids around, and, you know, you need to take responsibility for your life. And I want to be able to look up to you again. I'm your younger brother. This gentleman then ended up in one of the shelters where I work. And that's how I met him. And unfortunately, in the shelter system, things declined further for him. Some of the shelters we have here are not really safe spaces. The crowds within the shelters, there's a lot of people who are very vulnerable. And then there's also dealers who've infiltrated the shelter system, and they will get people involved, prey on vulnerable individuals, get them to deal drugs, you know, that kind of thing. And so unfortunately, this individual ended up in that kind of a situation, and he was actually stabbed outside of the shelter and almost passed away from this, ended up in a critical care unit in a Toronto hospital. And I went to visit him, and this is the poem about that interaction. So I'm just going to share it. And it's called Give Me Words, Not Meds. Sitting in a circle, huddling, with a broken shoulder girdle, a shattered windpipe, a punctured lung, around an extinguished fire, burnt out desiccated logs, broken desert like a mosaic of collapsed glass, sands that have been ground to flax, and the smell of embers that have been snuffed out. Fire curling up while famished antelopes fly, seeking food and shelter, but finding only skeletal branches on which to graze. Boulders drop, heart stops, with concentric rings emanating out, power that can only come from the most powerful, slicing through energy fields, souls electrocuted, eyes brought back to life, sacred prayers seize the spark for this deadly kindling in the dark. Troops of angels plug it in to a jeweled fishnet that encircles the world, humanity, the universe, Allah, one point to infinity. Draw a circle in the sand with an eloquent lightning bolt. Stand your ground, straighten your back, head tall, be proud, call out, pound the earth, let the wisdom give birth. Lifting up the dead, defending them from further wounding. Lost and found, a space so profound, nights that are crowned in the wounded warrior on the global battlefield, so little yield. Salah, a forgotten shield. Dua, a broken sword. The Shahada, too far afield. In the tent, the chief strategist with machinations of the mind and calculations aplenty, dissecting, spying, engrossing, diagnosing, but utterly disconnected. All that education leading to a seeing blindness, a madness, a tightness, a soul-numbing rightness. Decimated condition, lost intuition, devastated foundation, trauma admission. Dead yet alive. Give me words, not meds, he cries. We both wipe our eyes. Amin, the angels say. Life pours out of their light as Allah shows us the way. So what I'm getting at there is that this gentleman didn't care so much about the diagnosing that was going on and all the medication, the cocktail of medications that people were trying to give him, though some of them were helpful, and he would admit to that. But what he really wanted was, sacred words of healing. And in fact, that's what I shared with him. So we recited the Quran together. And that gave him some comfort because he was actually at the edge. And I also was advocating for him to stay longer in the hospital because we didn't have enough supports for him in terms of his mental health concerns. Unfortunately, however, because he was medically stable and there's such a push here to get people out as soon as that happens, even though it's a trauma unit, it was only the physical trauma they were concerned with. They discharged him the very next day. And sadly, there was no discharge plan. He wasn't discharged to the right place. He was sent off without adequate supports, and he ended up passing away from a fentanyl overdose a few weeks later. And I wrote this poem before that happened. And I remember also before he got stabbed, I told our patient navigator, Charlie, this gentleman survived Syria and he's going to die on the streets of Toronto. And through his death, in fact, he's breathed new life into the poem I wrote and into the work I'm doing. And so I'm so honored to share that story in order to highlight why this kind of work is important and why we need to integrate faith, spirituality, attentiveness to people's cultures in the work we're doing. So that's some of the purposes of why I'm doing this work, and you can read it for yourself. Alan, how much time do I have left?
So I believe we might need to wrap up
Sure.
very soon. So yeah.
Sure. So this quote is merely to point out that there is a very strong and rich historical tradition around mental health, mental illness in the Islamic world. And in fact, some of the first psychiatric institutions that we know of were built in the 800s by Muslims, and they were designated for mental health care. And I wish I could share a little bit more, but I will leave that in the interest of time. You could take a look at this. And there's more, if you want to learn more, there's some links to some of the work around Mindfully Muslim, resources in the Canadian context that are helpful. Again, some more talks about some of my work. And I just want to express my thanks to you and to all the people who've helped get me here today. I myself feel like I know I'm on a sacred journey. And to every person who's opened a door, to every person who's closed a door, I am grateful because I wouldn't be here without that. And finally, to seek your forgiveness. This is again in line with Islamic etiquette. If I've misspoken or if I've taken up too much time, please forgive me. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for your very, very powerful presentation. So at this point, I'm just going to have the other chair of this session, Dr. Dogger, to give his comments.
Dr. Dogar, sir. Dr. Imtiaz Dogar, I think is here, sir. Sir, please unmute. Dr. Dogar, sir, please unmute.
Ji, hello. I'm unmuted.
Thank you, sir. Your comments as the co-chairperson for the session, for this
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. It's been wonderful learning, and it has opened new ways, new avenues for us to excel in this very field. And there we have added cultural aspects, and particularly these very yoga-related aspects. And we see its new dimensions which we can add, which can increase our capacity to manage our patients in a better way. And of course, it can enhance our understanding towards a better assessment of patients as well. And of course, this is going to add new avenues to our management aspects as well. It's been a wonderful lecture and we have learned a lot. And thank you very much for Dr. Gautam and the rest of the team for keeping us on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Doker. Yeah. So, Dr. Ray, do we have any more time for Q&A at this point, or
Not
do we
at
need
this
to proceed?
point, sorry, sir, but we can after we maybe after Dr. Abbasi is waiting as well. So without much ado, thank you so very much, Dr. Ahmed. It's been an extreme honor to have you with us, and of course, Dr. Fang and Dr. Dogar, sir. Thank you for chairing this session as well. May I now invite our the next session, the chairpersons are Dr. Alexander Almeida Moreira from Brazil and Dr. Waziul Alam Chaudhry from Bangladesh, who's also the honorary treasurer for the SAARC Psychiatric Federation, to chair this very exclusive session to be delivered by Dr. Abbasi. Over to you, chairpersons. Dr. Almeida and Dr. Waziul, sir. The CV slide has been shared, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the opportunity for being here and congratulate for the meeting. And it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Faha Abbasi. She's professor of psychiatry at the Michigan State University. She has received the American Psychiatric Association Minority Fellowship. She used the grant money to create awareness about cultural components, to redefine it as not just tolerance, but acceptance. Without further ado, I'd like to open the floor to Dr. Abbasi to present her talk.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I will start with our traditional greetings. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be with you all today going forward. Amazing conference, and I'm very grateful to Dr. Fang to introducing me to the conference and bringing me in this conversation. Really good to see Dr. Dogar, and amazing experience learning from Yusra Ahmed. So I thank you, Yusra, for setting up the stage and beautifully setting in the context and the lens of from Muslim traditions. Building on that, I think I do have a PowerPoint, and let me just quickly share that. So everyone good? Can see the PowerPoint? Okay. So I think building on what Yusra said, and I have the slides and we can go through them real quick, but I think what I want to set up a few things about Islam, which for me was an amazing experience when after becoming psychiatrist, I went back and started looking at the teachings and the holy book and the practices from that lens of mental wellness. And I realized that mental competency and clarity is so central and integral to being a practicing Muslim. Like many faith traditions, what we see is that Islam actually, you can be born Muslim, but in order for you to be a practicing Muslim, your mental competency is very central. And that's why in Islam, you will see that all the practices that we do, or the rituals or anything, traditions are all about keeping your mental well-being, to the point you all have heard Sharia law, right? We have heard the politicized version of it. But what Sharia law, the basic tenets of Islam talk about is how to preserve your wellness, how to preserve your family, how to preserve your property. So it's like a constitution, but preservation of your intellect is very central to it. And anything that takes it away from this mental clarity is either discouraged or clearly prohibited. And hence, that's why alcohol was prohibited, or any addictive substances, which were called khimr in Arabic, which means anything that takes you away from that mental clarity, to the point that extremes of emotions were also discouraged, like extreme pleasure seeking, or even anything that you do in anger. So even anger is discouraged. Mental clarity becomes very central to all the practices. And of course, naturally we come to mindfulness and being mindfully Muslim, like Yusra talked about that. That's why it becomes really important that we kind of do everything to preserve this wellness of our mind. And in Islam, we see that the physical and mental and emotional, spiritual wellness are all integrated into one. So when we say wellness, it's very wholesome, it's very healing. So giving that context, I'll go through the slides. So these are the 5 pillars that we have to practice to be a Muslim. We have to say, that's shahada, or you say it. Prayer is you act on it. Charity, and I will go through all the separate pillars describing it in next few slides. But basically the idea is that in order to be Muslim, you should know you are Muslim, you should say you are Muslim, you should believe you are Muslim, and then you should act as a Muslim. So it's a whole sum of your senses that has to be taken in account. So basically the first is to say, right, profess and believe and act as a Muslim. So we say, no God but God, right? We have to say these words, and we have to put faith that God is one, and acknowledge that the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was his last messenger. Kind of starting with the form of acceptance and giving in and bowing to a higher power. The important piece I want to focus on today is the Salah, where comes the piece of yoga and meditation comes together. So Salah is our prayer that we have to pray 5 times a day. And Salah, so you have seen all across different faith and traditions, there are ways of meditating and praying. But in Islam, Salah is a very active process. Not only mentally you're committing, but another thing we do is we perform wudu, which is clean up, wash before the prayer. And the concept was not only hygiene that you are washing away, but mentally also you are clearing up all webs and preparing to get into a form of meditation and act of yoga. It's very interesting, the simple act of running water. So I always wondered why we have to do it in a certain way. And then you realize you are running water over all your pressure points. So you are already starting to de-stress. And then when we go to Salah, to perform Salah, you are getting prepared not only to meditate, but you are doing yoga. Lot of postures that I see from Hatha yoga or different practices of yoga, that you are performing yoga, you are meditating and reciting Quranic verses, and you are doing the ultimate act of bowing in front of God, a higher power. So you are giving up control, you are giving up power. And another thing is that we stand in a rows, shoulder to shoulder. And the idea is it's a biggest lesson in equity and humbleness and humanity. So when you are standing in front of a higher power, you all are equal. So irrespective of who you are standing next to, you are all focused on in one direction. You are performing an act together in unison. So it's a very synergistic exercise that not only individual commitment and well-being, but you are synergistic to all the energy in the room. So it's an exercise in humbleness and thankfulness, gratitude. And so if you see some of the postures, you can understand. And finally, when we bow the head, you're also letting all the blood flow to your brain. And now each of these postures have been proven that you are not only stretching, letting go of toxicity, but you're relaxing your back muscles, neck muscles, you are letting go of all the stress. But ultimate act of bowing is where all the blood flows to your head, to your frontal lobe. And that's the ultimate act of relaxation. And also when you let go, I know we as psychiatrists know that in a few things that really exacerbate our depressions is sense of that there is no one, I'm alone, I have to make these decisions, or I have to keep the control. And this just an act of letting go and believing in a higher power gives you the eternal hope, will make you more futuristic. But the idea of synergizing the energy also, we know that isolation becomes a very big component of depression. So just being with others, this is how we do suicide prevention work, is continue to the conversation, continue the communication. And this is kind of an idea that one thing is performing it in alone, but when you do it synergistically, you're also being around, surrounding yourself with support and love. So this is amazing research that each of these position correspond. I'm sorry, it's blocking a little. So each prayer positions corresponding yoga position, and the position together activate all 7 chakras, energy fields in the body as per yoga practices. So you get benefit. And this another piece that I realized that it is strategically you are following the sun through the day. You start with before sunrise and you end after sunset. So your energy levels, whenever they are dipping, is actually the time that it's encouraged for you to say prayer. So when the 5 times you take break during the days, and now we also know that that is also scientifically being proven and encouraged, that don't sit for a long time, take breaks. So these are very strategically placed 5 prayers that kind of whenever your energy is ebbing or whenever your cortisol pulse is going high, your stress levels are high, you are supposed to take this break and come in peace, come in acceptance, humbleness, gratitude, and give up your control and become like more. So it's like a rejuvenation happening 5 times a day. And this is just an example of when we do it in congregation. And if you see, it's just the conformity, the unison, the equanimity of the moment, that you are all facing towards one energy. You become like a whole circle of energy. So a few things, and I want to open up for question and answer. So this is like other pillars about, it's like it's part of your pay and everything, that if you have extra after you have taken out for your comfortable needs. So kind of in Islam, excess is discouraged. accumulating wealth is in a way kind of like it's okay to save and be secure because preservation of property is an important right. But at the same time, if it's too much in excess, then you are taking away from someone. So that's where this system of charity is very built into in the system. Fasting, we now scientifically know the power of intermittent fasting, and we know as researchers, scientists, holy people have always taken fasting as part of the healing, as part of detoxifying your mental, physical, emotional being. So we have a month of fasting, 30 days of fasting. Idea behind it is you continue to have these practices, but how to consolidate it, how to make it into a discipline. So in these 30 days, it's not only about you fasting, it's also how we kind of enhance our spiritual practices during that month, are giving emotional, physical, mental services oriented, welfare oriented, benefit to the society. Everything is really augmented and enhanced during this month of Ramadan. It's ultimately an exercise in community building and resiliency, because by learning, sharing, and serving the less privileged, we are always focused on our privilege, but also on our responsibilities. Again, very encouraged to open the fast in a community setting. And this is actually happening in next couple of days. It will happen. It is the once in a lifetime. If you are not in debt, if you don't have financial responsibilities or physical constraints, it's encouraged that at least once in a lifetime you have to visit Makkah to perform Hajj. And it's a mandatory for those who can accommodate and afford it. And again, coming together, focused on one purpose, thinking of others. Again, exercise in community building, sharing of love and communal bonding. Again, if you see, you will see that it's about chakras, about the energies. When you circle around the central building of Kaaba, which was built by Abraham and his children. So when we are circling around this, it's almost like you are in unison from one person, how it's creating this ripple of energy. So it's a beautiful experience. And you also see that there's no segregation based on gender or economic status, or it's all, you all are one, and you are answering the call to the one and almighty. So it's an ultimate act of unity. So just bringing it together, three concepts which are very integral to Islam is that everything is really seeped into wellness. And this wellness starts with as one individual. So you have to be fully well. It's your religious obligation to live the best life that you can, in the sense that what level of spirituality you can take it to, what level of physical wellness you can take it to, what level of emotional wellness you can take it to. So it starts within one individual, but the idea is that every person responsible for their wellness, an resilient, well individual will tend to have well and healthy relationships. So from one person two persons, when they come together, healthy relationships. From that healthy relationships, healthy family units, and then the ripple effect of healthy family units to healthy communities. And then the final thing is bringing it all together for the bigger extended community, which is Ummah. So anytime you start an act of wellness, which is seeped in individual wellness, but when you extend it to the other person, it becomes an act of welfare. So from wellness flows into welfare, and from wellness, it's highly recommended, encouraged, and encouraged to bring it back into the community. And that's where the wellness turns into a societal resilience. And this is where the concept of Ummah comes in. So you would see that Muslims are geographically not that limited to one country. When we say community or Ummah, it transcends boundaries. You are thinking of bigger humanity. You are thinking of bigger universality of the concept of the community. So Ummah is literally means community. It's a fundamental concept in Islam expressing the essential unity and the theoretical equality of Muslims from diverse cultural and geographical settings. So if something is happening in Syria, if something is happening in Palestine or anywhere in the world, we're like just the numbers of 80% Muslims right now in refugee status. That is like you, wherever you are, you always carry that bond, that connection. So then you are also carrying that pain and trauma. So it becomes an individual's struggle can become a communal struggle. So in the same way, an individual strife can be helped with the communal support. So this concept of community becomes really important. But as a mental health provider, especially working in the realm of faith-based mental health, I also realize that if these communities are not validating, accepting, and inclusive, they can become the biggest source of distress. We also see in faith communities a lot of concepts of guilt and shame and like, what is the community gonna say about it? And that's where the stigma comes in. So this is why I added this slide that each one of us, this practice starts with each one of us. And it is the ultimate essence of meditation and yoga also, is how do we create these inclusive, accepting communities. So this is the last slide. I am in community, but it stands for inclusive, promoting the integral Islamic concepts of human unity, being cognizant of the diversity within the congregation and faith leaders, accepting, creating awareness around vulnerabilities and challenges, microaggressions, faith leaders, I would replace it because we do, same models apply to interfaith community. Faith leaders inadvertently might be using words, action, misquoting the religious verses to deepen the stigma of mental illnesses. We have to check our implicit biases. We have to be very cognizant of vulnerable populations around us and not become very like, one thing happens in these community, you come with the models of sin, hell, heaven. But when we look at it from mental health point of view, you cannot be judgmental. Actually, Islam also discourages judgmental. You have to sit with the broken. You have to sit with the vulnerable. And of course, be aware of our compassionate fatigue. We become these leading figures in these communities, then you are always carrying so much burden on you. I think most of us who are leaders in any capacity or fake leaders, especially in our communities. We have to be cognizant of that pressure. And that's where these quintessential concepts of yoga and mindfulness have to be embraced and fully practiced. And that, I think I would end there.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abbasi, for this very enlightening presentation. And I'd like to invite Dr. Vasil Chaudhuri to make some comments.
Please unmute, sir. Professor Chaudhuri, please unmute.
I'm audible?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Alexandra. I'm really very glad to hear from Dr. Farah Ahmed. It's a really very informative presentation with her soothing voice delivery. Real wonderful. Another thing is a very attractive, that is, she has beautifully utilized the religious rituals, properly blending with everyday life to improve mental health and physical fitness. Thank you once again. Actually, let's go to the main theme of our Yoga Day. It is humanity. You know, humanity is the most incomparable, precious and great virtue or quality of human being. And that's why human being is very different and superior than any species in the nature. So humanity refers to caring for and helping others wherever and whenever possible. It means helping others at times when they need that help the most. It is important as it helps us forget selfish interest at times when others need our needs our help. So what is humanity in Islam? That's what Farah just presented. I just supplement something in our presentation. Islam says or teaches that human beings are born in a state of purity, as well as with a natural moral sense that enables one to differentiate between what is good and what is not. Thank you for once again. I think I would like to finish my lecture this time. So at first, I offer my heartiest thanks and gratitude to our President, Dr. Gautam Saha, and his brilliant teams, particularly the three ladies and Dr. Ranjanda, those who are brilliantly conducted the total program. Our Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Afzal Javed, our guest of honor, Dr. Pratima Murthy, and many other legendary psychiatrists of India and outside India. The learned participant, learned speakers, and the listeners, those who are listening or observing our presentation. So with these few words, I would like to conclude my speech here, because I think we are already behind the schedule, but I'm really very impressed. That's a long program from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock. I think nobody is feeling bored. Rather, everybody is enjoying every moment. Actually, if we look at the history, the term yoga is derived from the Sanskrit verb yuzu, that is meaning join, connect, or unite. And that is originated in ancient India. Yoga is both a philosophy and a set of practices. Philosophically, yoga is rooted in the belief that all human suffering is the result of our minds ruminating about the past, feeling distress about the future, and not being connected to or present and engaged in the current moment. Practically, yoga is offered as an antidote of this suffering. That is, yoga practices serve to connect us to the present moment through a physical component like posture, breathing exercise, relaxation, meditation, like this. Simultaneously relieving us of the rumination and distress and thus contribute to our well-being. So thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I think that unfortunately we will not have time for questions. So let's move to the next talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just add one thing? So I'm going to share my email here for those of you who had questions. I would be more than happy to answer it and connect to you individually as well. So
I just wanted to quickly acknowledge the one question in the chat, which I think is actually untrue. The notion that Muslims believe that non-Muslims are inferior, that is absolutely incorrect.
Not true.
Absolutely incorrect. We're obligated to hold every human being as sacred. Thank you.
Human life is so simple thing. God, Allah, most merciful, is called Rahmatul Alameen. So for the universe, not for Muslims.
Creator of all the worlds.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. Beautifully said, ma'am. And of course, our hearts connect across countries and nations today. From Australia to Brazil on the other side, across 15 countries, we have had participants and speakers. That is the theme of humanity, and that is yoga.
That is the beauty of this session. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Brilliant.
So I would like to thank our chairperson.
Madam is with us, Professor Indira Sharma.
Yes, I'll invite her in. I've seen. Thank you, Gautam. Thank you so much. Yes, and very grateful, gratitude to all of you for joining us in this special session. And finally, we have two of our very esteemed, they're the pillars of yoga in Indian research under the leadership of Dr. Gangadhar sir, Professor Varambali and Dr. Hemant Bhargav. Professor Varambali is the present head of the Department of the Integrative Medicine at NIMHANS, and Dr. Bhargav, and they've been regular partners. We are also the three of us partners in crime sometimes, because we've always had been together in this International Yoga Day for the last 7 years, and they do the practical session. But sir, with your kind permission, if we have a quick 2 minutes from Professor Indira Sharma, and then we can set the scene for you, sir, to do the practical session. Madam, please unmute yourself and share with us a couple of your lines of wisdom.
Well, I think this has been a wonderful event which has been organized. And the point that I would like to mention is about yoga is the yam and niyam. I think this has received less attention. And this is the code of conduct. And the Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga clearly says that the 8 steps have to be followed in sequence. So yam and niyam are very, very important guidelines for behavior. and it focuses mainly on how one can control instinctual behavior and make it compatible for a well integrated personality. I think this is very, very important. And I would like to appreciate the great hard work by the whole team. The leader, of course, Professor Gautam Saha, Dr. Afzal, Javed, to organize this big program. I think hats off to all of you. And I'm sorry I was a bit late because of my patients. But anyhow, when I came, I think the last session was also very good, which I attended. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, Varambali sir and Dr. Hemant Bhargav. Thank you.
Good evening, madam. Good evening to all of you. Very nice to see such an international list of speakers and participants here. And I heard the last 3 or 4 lectures, very interesting. The issues are very similar and cut across religion and culture. So that's something very nice to see. And as we have been mentioning, for the last few years, Dr. Gautam Saha, Dr. Rajashree and Dr. Afzal Javed, we have been working together. We even conducted a course in yoga for psychiatric illness for the World Psychiatric Association. So it was a very wonderful experience. I thank the SAARC Psychiatric Federation, Dr. Saha and Dr. Rajashree for this. And today, on the eve of the Yoga Day, we are discussing what yoga can do for mental health. But equally so, it's also important to look at evidence base for this, not just say that, what is written in the ancient texts is to be followed. So we have been gathering evidence in NIMHANS for the past maybe 10, 15 years under the leadership of Gangadhar. And some of the work has been really eye-opening for us, looking at the biological and psychological changes brought about by yoga in patients with mental illness. And my colleague, Dr. Hemant Bhargav, who is an assistant professor of yoga in the Department of Integrative Medicine at NIMHANS, has been part of much of this research. He now has a Welcome DBT grant on yoga for opioid use, which is an epidemic in many countries. And we have found very gratifying results in a preliminary trial. And Dr. Hemant is going to start his grant shortly. It's a 5-year project looking at the effects of yoga on patients with substance use. And as Dr. Indira Sharma was saying, we have tried to incorporate all the elements. Of course, the internal yoga or the last 3 meditative elements are a little difficult to measure in terms of biological rhythms. But the yam, niyam, the asana, pranayama are fairly easy to do. And that is why around the world, the focus has been so much on asana and pranayama that people have forgotten the other parts of the 8-limb path. It is, of course, difficult to design a program which has all these elements, but once people get onto the path, they look at it. You can see, even though we don't talk about all the aspects, people, when they perform yoga, they gradually become more mindful. Then they start looking at their physical health, their diet, and a lot of things change, whether you like it or not. So that's something very interesting. So now we are going to have a practical session of yoga that can be performed fairly easily by anybody anywhere in the world. We are not going to show very complex practices because that's really not needed by yoga. We are not competing with anybody to gain a prize in yoga. We're trying to improve our health. So Hemant will, and my colleague from the NIMHANS Integrated Center for Yoga will show us something that can be done on an everyday basis. So yoga should become a part of life. Just takes 20-25 minutes a day. Hopefully we can all incorporate it. And more importantly, we can get our patients and our families and the population to imbibe some of these elements. Thank you very much. Hemant, please take over and guide us how yoga can be done for improving our mental health.
Thank you very much, Shivram sir, for a wonderful, introduction to yoga and what we are doing here. My greetings to all the, honorable dignitaries who are there in this wonderful event. So without, much delay, I would just share my slides. I have my colleague, Dr. Gautam there. I will just pin him so that you can also observe the presentation, the demonstration of the yoga. So I would like to congratulate SAARC Psychiatric Federation once again for organizing this cross-cultural, cross-country wonderful event. Before we go, a very brief presentation on, people say that yoga is a lifestyle, What is this yogic lifestyle? So in the Vedas, in the Katha Upanishad, you see this parable of a chariot, where these 5 horses are the 5 senses, the mind is the reins, and the intellect is trying to manage these senses. And there is a consciousness sitting behind and watching. If the life is governed by the horses, if the horses dominate the life, that is not a yogic lifestyle. A yogic lifestyle is that life that turns inwards and is directed by the consciousness lying in the depth of the heart of a human being. So therefore, a major ancient text called Hatha Yoga Pradipika defines yoga as an ancient way of right living, that is to live in harmony within oneself, body, emotion, and intellect coming in synchrony, and then the harmony with the nature. The word Hatha comes from the roots Ha, which means the sun, and the Tha means the moon. So fundamentally, all the yogic practices are aligned, in such a way that they align the individual's biorhythm with the cosmic rhythms. So basically, I was really glad to see speakers coming from different countries, from different religions, understanding yoga as a science of well-being beyond any religion. So therefore, we have conquered all the 5 basic elements through external technology, but we need this yogic technology of inner sciences, to attune our biorhythms to the cosmic rhythms. And this attunement can lead to enhanced mental and physical resilience. With this resilience, we can enhance our social rhythms, and through enhancement of social rhythms, we can enhance our complete well-being. So this is an ancient practice originating in India, associated with connectedness, philosophy, and peace. And as Indira Madam was saying, Shivram sir said that when Patanjali Rishi devised yoga, it was not only physical postures, it had systematic 8 components dealing with the lifestyle. And in the renaissance of yoga in the coming millennia, we see that they have never been more applicable than now. So with this background, very quickly, I will define yoga as a union between individual consciousness to the universal consciousness. And I request all of you, to prepare yourself for the practice of yoga. And for this preparation, the most important thing that is required is that you develop a sense of gratitude towards whoever that inspires you in your life. If you believe in God, just close your eyes and connect to your own God. And with this, let us begin this session with a prayer. You may keep your hands facing upwards, or you may adopt Namaskar Mudra, or whichever pose that suits you. We will begin the session with a prayer. Asato ma sargamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Let us pray that may this practice of yoga lead us from untruth to truth, from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, from disease and fear of death to the knowledge of immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Let us get ready for the practice of yoga. The first practice that we are going to do is known as Tadasana stretch. Please come to a standing position. Bring your legs in line with your shoulders, or if you are on a chair, just bring your legs parallel to each other. Interlock your fingers, keep them on the chest. Take a deep breath in and stretch your hands above your head, palm facing upwards. Take another deep breath in and now stretch your whole body upwards. If you are standing, come up on your toes, stretch up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Breathe out, release, and relax. Close your eyes and just observe the changes that are happening in your body and breath. Now, spread your legs 2 feet apart. If you're on the chair, just spread your legs, interlock your fingers, keep them on the chest, stretch your hands above your head, palm facing upwards, elbows straight. Take a deep breath in. As you breathe out, bend to the right side. Feel the stretch on the left side of your body. Feel the synchrony between your body, breath, and mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, come to center. Now breathe out and bend to the other side. Continue normal breathing. Close your eyes and try to relax. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, come to center. Release your hands and relax. Gently close your eyes and try to relax your shoulder muscles. Try to relax your back muscles. Let us all chant 1 round of the humming breath and feel the vibration in the head region. When you chant, feel that you are turning your consciousness inwards to the depth of your heart. Take a deep breath in. Next practice is called as hands in and out breathing. Very gently join your feet together. Join your palms together in front of you. Now, as you breathe in, spread your hands, turn your neck slightly upwards, gentle smile on the face. Open up. Breathe out, come back. Release and relax. Continue for 3 more rounds. Breathe in, open up. Gentle smile on the face. Breathe out, come back. Beautiful synchronization of the body and the breath. Breathe in, spread your arms. Gentle smile on your face. Breathe out, come back. Release your hands and relax. Now we are going to do a set of postures. If you are in a standing posture, bring your legs in line with your shoulder. If you're sitting on a chair, just come towards the edge of the chair. People with high blood pressure, heart disease, low back pain, and glaucoma, kindly avoid bending forward. You can bend back 2 times. Now, please keep your hands on the waist region. Push your elbow backwards, open up your chest. Take a deep breath in and bend back, look up towards the ceiling. Maintain. Gentle smile on the face. Try to relax your body in this posture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slowly breathe in, come to center. And as you breathe out, glide your hands along your thighs and bend forward. In this final posture, drop your neck down, drop your hands down, and completely relax the upper half of your body. Completely surrender the upper half of your body to the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very slowly, as you breathe in, come to center. Wonderful. Now we have prepared ourselves for the practice of pranayama. Please come to a comfortable sitting posture. When we go through different kind of emotions, it dysregulates our breath. So here, yoga philosophy proposes that if I consciously regulate my breath, whether it will change my management of emotions or my mood. We are going to do this breathing in 3 different mudras. The first mudra is called as chin mudra. Join your thumb and the index finger, palm facing downwards. Bring your attention to the lower region of your chest. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and hold your breath inside. Feel the air entering the lower zone of your chest. Breathe out and empty your lungs. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release your mudra. Palm facing upwards. Sit comfortably and just observe the breath. Air enters the nostrils as you breathe in. Slightly warmer air as you breathe out. Now adopt the second mudra, the Chinmay mudra. Join your thumb and the index finger, bend the other 3 fingers and tuck them in. Place this mudra downwards. Now just bring the attention towards the middle region of the chest. Take a deep breath in and hold your breath inside. Breathe out and empty your lungs. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Breathe out. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release the mudra. Palm facing upwards. And now the last mudra, the Adi mudra. Bend your thumb and make a fist. Face this mudra downwards. Keep attention on the upper chest region, just below your shoulders. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and hold your breath inside. Feel the air in the upper zone of your chest. Breathe out and empty your lungs. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release the mudra. Palm facing upwards. Close your eyes and just observe the breath. Let us all chant one round of humming breath. Feel that you are turning your consciousness inwards. Take a deep breath in Next practice is Kapalabhati Pranayama.
I had a doubt. Can I ask?
Madam, can you ask this after the practice, or is it related to the practice and you can ask me?
Yeah. Do we exhale through the mouth or nose?
Madam, everything in yoga is through the nostrils. You know, there are various researches that have shown that the effects on the brain that you gain when the air touches the olfactory bulb are entirely different from what you gain when you breathe in through the mouth. So unless specifically told, everywhere it is through the nostrils.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, the next practice is Kapalabhati Pranayama, also called as the forehead shining breath. I request people who are empty stomach, at least 2 hours, of empty stomach condition is needed before you do Kapalabhati. If you have had your meal recently, kindly avoid this practice. People with epilepsy, hernia, any recent surgery, women during menstruation and last 6 months of pregnancy also should not practice this. Others can do this. Adopt chin mudra, thumb and the index finger together, palm facing upwards. Now, bring your attention towards your navel region. Apna dhyan apne nabhi chakra pe laiye. And now, pull your abdomen forcefully in as you breathe out through the nostril. In 1 minute, kindly perform 30 seconds. Start the practice. Forcefully pull your abdomen in, 1 stroke in 2 seconds. Gently stop the practice. Close your eyes and just observe the breath. Kapalabhati helps weight loss. Kapalabhati also enhances cognition and reduces the sleep and drowsiness. It energizes the body. After the practice, your breath may stop for a while. Just remain calm and relaxed and allow your breath to resume naturally. Next practice is called as Bhastrika Pranayama. This is another fast yogic breath, which we have found to be very useful in reducing depression. We are going to perform 30 strokes of this breathing, forceful inhalation and forceful exhalation. People with epilepsy or any recent surgery in the last 6 months may avoid the practice. Adopt Adi Mudra besides your shoulder. Bend your thumb and make a fist. As you breathe in, throw your arms up, open up your fist. As you breathe out, make the fist again. Use your full lung capacity. This is bellows breath. Start the practice. Breathe in, breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, next 20 rounds, fast. Release and relax. Palms facing upwards. Close your eyes. Feel the fresh oxygen circulating throughout the body. Bhastrika energizes the whole system, brings the fresh oxygen to each and every cell and tissue. Bhastrika removes depression, brings the enthusiasm back. You may feel the subtle vibrations of the pranic energy around your palms. Bhastrika also purifies the senses, helps reduce craving for substances and the food. Let us chant another round of humming breath. Feel that you are turning your consciousness inwards. Breathe in. The next practice is Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama. This pranayama helps reduce anxiety. It also balances the blood pressure. A very good practice to be performed even after food to enhance digestion and before going to bed to enhance quality of sleep. Adopt Chin Mudra with your left hand, joining your thumb and the index finger, and adopt Nasika Mudra with your right hand, bend your index finger and middle finger. We are going to use the ring finger and the thumb to change the nostrils. Take a deep breath in and hold your breath inside. Gently press the right nostril with the right thumb. Breathe out from the left. Breathe in from the left. Change the nostril. Breathe out from the right. Now breathe in from the right. Change the nostril and breathe out from the left. This is one cycle. Perform for 2 more cycles. When you perform Nadi Shuddhi, make sure that your breath is so gentle that you yourself do not hear any sound of your breath. Try to keep your breath slow and rhythmic. Let us perform one more round. Release and relax. Palm facing upwards. Gently close your eyes. Feel the balance in the airflow between both the nostrils. Feel the calmness in the mind. Now, by performing humming breath, let us try to turn our consciousness completely inwards. Gently close your thumb, close your ears with your thumb, cover your eyes with your fingers, touch your tongue to the upper palate. Let us perform humming breath for 3 rounds. Feel the vibration of the same in your face and the head region. Take a deep breath in. One more round. Slowly release and relax. Feel the massaging effect of the vibration on your head region. Brahmari practice deactivates the limbic system, brings instant calmness to the mind. Now, the last practice for today is mind-sound resonance. Adopt Chin Mudra with your right hand. Keep the left hand on the center of the chest. This is Anahata Chakra, the center for emotions. We are going to chant the sound Ah. And when you chant, feel that you are expressing deep-rooted emotional pain and distress out. You are releasing it. We are going to chant Ah for 2 times. Please chant chant loudly with mouth wide open. Take a deep breath in. Ah. Feel the vibration in the chest region. One more round. Ah. Now very gently touch your fingertips to the hollow region of your throat. This is Vishuddhi Chakra. And we are going to chant the sound Oo. When you chant, feel that you are expressing what you could not, your suppressed creativity. Take a deep breath in. Ooh. Ooh. The third sound is the sound Ma, the humming sound. Feel the vibration on the top of your head. This is Anahata Chakra, the center for inner bliss. When you chant, feel that you are getting connected to the source of bliss within you. Close your eyes, touch your tongue to the upper palate. Breathe in. Very slowly drop your hands down. Close your eyes. Feel the deep relaxation in the body, slowing down of your breath, calmness in the mind. Feel that we are all connected. Feel that we are connected with the nature. Gently adapt Namaskar Mudra, or you can keep your palm facing upwards. Please pray for universal well-being. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all creatures in this universe be happy. May all creatures in this universe be healthy. May we see auspiciousness all around us. May no one suffer. Om, peace, peace, peace. Gently rub your hands together and give the warmth to your face, head, ears, and the neck. Thank you. Thank you very much. The theme for this year is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. You know, that the whole world, one family. And that is what we have seen today. So thank you once again to the SAARC Federation for organizing this wonderful event and for giving this opportunity. Over to Shivrams.
Thank you, Hemant, for logging in. Actually, he is in Pondicherry at the invitation to conduct another Yoga Day program there. So thank you very much, Hemant. Hope you are not late for your return journey. Thank you, Dr. Rajashree. I think it has been a fitting end to a very nice discussion today. And I again thank the SAARC Psychiatric Federation and all of you who joined with us. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you, Gautam, for joining. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemant sir. Thank you, Varambali sir. Thank you, Gautam sir, for joining and making this such a beautiful end. And it is my pleasure and honor to invite the convener of the subcommittee of the Spirituality and Yoga section of SAARC Psychiatric Federation, who is also the incoming president or the president-elect of Sri Lankan Psychiatric Association, Dr. Sajiva Namarasinghe, sir. to give the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you very
Sir,
much,
can we
Rajashree.
just
Can you hear me?
close this
Yeah.
screen? Thank you. Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, so let me start by thanking Dr. Afzal Javed, the president of the WPA, our chief guest, and our guest of honor, Dr. Pratima Murthy, the director of NIMHANS. And I would also like to thank all the chairpersons and the speakers who contributed today. Time does not permit me to name them individually. And I'll also a big word of thanks to all the three chairpersons, Dr. B. N. Gangadhar and Dr. P. Kishan, and our moderator, Dr. Nishka Sinha, and last but not least to Dr. Rajashree Ray, who is actually the live wire of the yoga subcommittee. And finally, big thanks to all the participants who spent their Sunday with us, and hope to see you again with another program from the yoga subcommittee. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you so much, sir. Your inspiration means a lot to us, and especially joining all the way from Sri Lanka. And I wish everyone a very happy Father's Day as well, because fathers are there, and that is what makes us so blessed. On that note, if there's no other final comments that I would need to take, is there anyone who wants to make a final comment? I see many seniors still here. Would you like to, sir? Please raise your hands or unmute yourself before we can close, if you are free. Anyone wants to make any final comments? No, I think we've had a very long day. Thank you to my sister, Shormishadi and Nishka, for such wonderful coordinating this whole program with us together. And of course, my pranam to Gautam da, and Dr. Afzal Javed sir and Pratima Murthy ma'am, and Indira Sharma ma'am, all the seniors who are here, Srinivasan sir. Thank you. It's been a wonderful time. Stay blessed. Let peace prevail. Let humanity prevail. With that note, thank you very much to Torrent Pharmaceuticals for being a fantastic host this evening. Hitanmoy and Chandon, you've done incredibly well. We thank you very much. So we'll end this meeting. Stay blessed. Have a very beautiful weekend. Thank you. Host, please close the meeting.
Ma'am, shall I close this meeting?